Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Muscatine County's Forum for School Board Candidates. Tonight I welcome candidates Chris Anderson, Tim Bauer, Tammy Drawbaugh, Beverly Gertz, and Toby McCarter, who are running for a four-year term. There are 3 seats that are open. Welcome to the viewing audience and to the audience here in attendance. This is a live broadcast on Channel 2 or Channel 702, and it will be rebroadcast. We're in City Hall tonight in Muscatine, and I thank the city for opening this space to us. I'm Sue Johansson, and I'll be moderating this evening. I'm reminded of 3 historic events in the month of August. First, the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote in 1920. In those days, the League of Women Voters was created to help women learn to navigate governmental systems in which they had been shut out. Today, the League of Women Voters continues to educate our members and the public about issues and candidates. We provide educational opportunities with speakers like David Osterberg, who raised our awareness of water quality in Iowa. Leagues like ours provide voter registration and voter service, events like this Candidates Forum. In an effort to form a more perfect union, Congress passed a resolution in the 70s making August 26th Women's Equality Day. In August of 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law. The Voting Rights Act aimed to overcome legal barriers at state and local levels that prevented African Americans from exercising their right to vote. There were barriers to voting in this country at that time. It was wrong then, and attempts to create hurdles to keep eligible voters from polls are wrong today. The League of Women Voters is working to see that all elections are free, fair, and accessible to all citizens. The League of Women Voters of Muscatine County feels privileged to be able to host this forum, and we are grateful for the opportunity to learn more about these candidates who want to serve our community as school board members. We appreciate all of you who are here tonight in our city council chambers and to those people who are watching at home. We hope that tonight's forum will be beneficial to all the voters in selecting candidates when you go to the polls. The League of Women Voters is comprised of people, women and men, to form an organization that encourages you, the voters, to be informed and actively participate in government. The League does not support any candidate. We don't oppose any candidate either. And the League influences public policy through education and advocacy. Through voter service activities, information on candidates and election issues are provided, and voter participation is promoted. This forum is a voter service event, and our Candidates Night is a chance to learn more about the people who are running for school board position. I'll begin tonight's event with giving candidates time to introduce themselves and to tell you why they are running for a seat on the school board. All of the questions that I have here in front of me and those that have been collected will be new to the candidates. Each question will have a rotation of who speaks first, and time limits will help us move the evening along. The League members are distributing cards and will collect your questions. So let's begin. These candidates have 2 minutes to give personal information about themselves and to tell you why they are running for the Muscatine School Board. We're going to work in an alphabetical order, and so we're going to start with Chris Anderson. Chris?
Thank you, Sue.
Sure.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the League of Women's Voters for putting this on for us, and thank you to all you guys for coming out, too. As I've been thinking about what I wanted to say over these 2 minutes for the last couple weeks, I kept going through stats and all this stuff, and I realized that's really not what matters. I keep thinking about the first time I was actually in this room. I sat right over there. I was about 10 years old, job shadowing A.J. Johnson, and it was part of my education. It was Cub Scouts, but it was something that everybody reached out and was a part of. I continued my education here. I finished up at Colorado, went to Central, MHS, MCC and actually finished at Iowa Wesleyan through its Muscatine extension. I can still go to the spot in the high school where I met my wife for the first time. The school district is what's given me a career, it's what's given me a family, and it's time to start giving back. And that actually started about 10 years ago. I got a district report card in the mail. It showed that the graduation rate was at 70%. And I called my old principal, Paul Brooks, who I'd still been in contact with, and I said, is this right? I mean, 70% doesn't seem that good. And he's like, well, there's a little bit of funny math in there, but yeah, it's not good. He said, let me tell you about Flickinger Learning Center and what we're doing, and maybe you can help out. So I went down, I was on the board, became the assistant director for a while. That's really where my passion for education was fostered and how much of a difference it can make in the community. We all know that education can be the silver bullet for many of the problems the community faces: hate, poverty, unemployment, and unless we start early and keep everybody involved, it's not going to happen. So thank you again for coming out.
Thank you. Let's move to Tim Bauer.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank you, Sue Johansson, and the League of Women Voters for bringing this event tonight. It's a great opportunity to participate and have the community ask us questions. As sitting on the board for 8 years, it's nice to see this room full tonight. So I like that. First of all, congratulations, everybody that's running. It's good to see we've got 5 candidates, more the better. That shows that we do have interest in one of the most important institutions in society today. First, a little bit about myself. My wife and I have lived in Muscatine for a little over 20 years. Karen and I have been married for 30 years, and we have 3 children, one of which is 2 of them are graduates of Iowa State University. Our son is a graduate of the University of Iowa just in May, and our daughter teaches math in one of the largest high schools in the state of Iowa, at Lincoln High School in Des Moines Public Schools. So we're very familiar with a lot of the diverse issues that we have in all the schools in the state of Iowa. I graduated from Fairfield High School in Fairfield, Iowa, small farm community. I grew up there, out in the country, enjoyed it, and then we moved to Muscatine, like I said, back in 1997. I graduated from Iowa State University and also from the University of Iowa through the Executive MBA program, and I'm currently employed with Siemens in Burlington, Iowa, as the Quality Environmental Health and Safety Manager, along with Warranty and Lean Integration Manager. I'm very active in the community as far as our church is concerned. I'm on a number of committees, and I'm also Sir Stephen's minister, which my wife and I went through the training a year ago down in St. Louis and enjoyed that tremendously. Very active in the schools. I'm also been on the Southeast Iowa STEM Advisory Board, so STEM is something very important to me. Everybody touches STEM, and that's one of the main passions I have when it comes to being involved with the schools. I enjoy being on the school board. I look forward to serving again if I am elected, and I want to thank everybody for being here tonight.
Thank you. Tammy Drabaugh.
Sue, thank you to you and to the League of Women Voters for bringing together this event. It is important, and it's great to be up here with a full table. I, too, am glad there's so many that want to be involved in our community. My name is Tammy Drabaugh, and I am a native to Muscatine. My husband, Paul, and I have 2 children. Our son, Caleb, just graduated from Muscatine High School this May and is headed to Northwestern University this fall. Our daughter, Emma, just stepped into the halls of MHS. So we officially became a 2-generation Muscatine High School graduation family, which I'm very excited about. I've worked for the H&I Corporation and their operating companies for the past 20 years. I've done a variety of things from roles in IT to human resources to business process improvement to sales. I currently am a training manager at Allsteel. When I'm not working, you'll find me, and when I'm not supporting my own children and their activities, there's a lot of places I like to volunteer in the community and within the state. You will see that there's a student focus on all of them. But I'm a youth leader through our local church. I am the president of our Band Booster Association for the Muskie Band Boosters. I am a vice president for the Choral Boosters. And I am a director on the Iowa High School Music Association. After 11 years and 3 terms on the Muscatine Community School Board, I am seeking re-election because I love the work and I'm not done advocating for our students. Our district looks dramatically different than it did 11 years ago. But one thing will never change is that all of our students deserve the very best that we have to offer them. Great things are happening in our district, and I want to see us keep that momentum, and I want to be a part of that commitment.
Thank you very much. Beverly Gertz.
Thank you. As she said, my name is Beverly Gertz. I have been retired for the last 4 years. Before that, I worked for the Muscatine Community School District for over 31 years as a grade school custodian. Currently, I provide before and after care for my grandchildren who attend Colorado. I am a member of the Muscatine Genealogical Society, where I do a lot of transcribing for their website. I am a Webelos 2 leader for my grandson's Cub Scout pack. And right now I am head of our church, Bloomington Muscatine Friends, where I am studying to become a pastor in the Quaker faith. The reason I want to run for the school board is because we have made some great improvements, but I think we have a ways to go. And since I spent so much time inside the system, I think I can give a unique perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. And Toby McCarter.
Thank you, Sue, and League of Women Voters and everybody here. When's the last time somebody with an M went last? Really. My name is Toby McCarter. I am married, fortunately married, to one Heather McCarter. We have 3 children, one who's a sophomore at the University of Iowa, 2 children who just entered, well, one just entered West as a 6th grader, and one is an 8th grader. We've been in Muscatine for about 3.5 years, but I will tell you that my business, I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones. The city of Muscatine has really embraced us as a family. Our kids have flourished, and the city of Muscatine has offered me an opportunity, and the community of Muscatine, to give back. I'm a part of Muscatine Charities. I'm on the board of Muscatine Charities. I'm on a committee for the Chamber of Commerce Membership Committee. Gosh, 1 minute already. More importantly, why am I running? I believe in the Muscatine Community School District. I want to be sure and prepare every student is ready for success. I want to make sure that all students are kindergarten ready. And I want to ensure all high school students have career pathways and are career ready. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so prior to tonight, the League created a 2-part question that was presented to the candidates in advance. And the candidates will have 90 seconds to answer these questions. What might you be willing to do to encourage Muscatine Community School District employees to live and work in Muscatine? And what would you do to encourage retention in regards to policies, wage structures, and incentives to promote residency in Muscatine? And we're going to start with Tim Bauer.
I've thought about this question, Sue, ever since we received this letter in mid-August, so I've been wondering about what is my response. And it kind of came to me tonight on the way home from work. I actually live here in Muscatine, of course, but I work in Burlington. And I've worked here for a number of years in Muscatine. I also worked in the Quad Cities and now in Burlington. And I asked myself, why do we live in Muscatine? And it's not just because of the school board. It's because of what the schools do. It's what the community offers. It's what the businesses in this community do for each other, and how we can work together to bring more people into Muscatine and stay here and be here. It's up to all of us. The schools are a very important cog to that, but our local industry, who supports our districts so much, is part of it too. They want their employees to live here and come to Muscatine. We want our employees to come and live in Muscatine. And to do that, we've got to show and tell what we're all about. We've got so many things to offer. We've got great schools, a great community college. We've got local industry that provide in so many different ways. And we've got people like you and volunteers and members like the school board members that volunteer their time endlessly and tirelessly to do better for our students and our children. That is why we must be a part of encouraging people to live here in Muscatine. It's not just the school board. We are part of the puzzle to make it happen.
Okay, thank you. Tammy Drabaugh, your response?
Growing up in Muscatine, I never thought that I would come back to Muscatine and raise my family here, and yet here I am, and I wouldn't go back and change that decision for anything. Muscatine needs to be viewed as a destination. We have an amazing school district. We have a very large school district in the state of Iowa, and we have to start talking about what we have to offer. We absolutely have to work together. We need to look in Muscatine for all of our needs before I'm guilty of, it's easy to hop on the computer and type www.imgonnagetittomorrow when I click the button. But supporting our local businesses, supporting each other, and helping connect our new teachers with young professional networks, with helping connect them with who do you go to for your medical provider, where do you go for your professional services. We must work together to provide each other that connection and share the great gems that we have in our community.
Thank you. Beverly Gertz?
You know, I think we need to promote Muscatine as the place to be. We have that Midwest-friendly small-town feel. We have entertainment from a new movie theater to a symphony orchestra. We have parks and trails for the active family. We have the best school district. We are a blue zone community, which means we are dedicated to making our town a better place to live. So I think we need to sell our town as the place to live rather than mandate that you have to live here. But I think whatever we do, it needs to apply to all the groups. I don't want to single out teachers. I think we should encourage all employees. As far as retention, I don't think I can answer that until I know why people are leaving or thinking of leaving. I think we need to have some one-on-one talks with some people and find out why you're leaving or why you're thinking about leaving, and is it something we can fix, and then fix it.
Thank you. Toby McCarter?
I believe as a board member, it's our job to help the district provide the tools and resources to attract the best talent, as well as continue to be fiscally responsible. An idea might be, what if we offered some sort of relocation package to new teachers? However, we want to make sure that they have some investment as well. What if a part of that relocation package for expenses would be something like if they left in the first year, they'd have to pay 100% back. If they left within 2 years, they may have to repay 2/3, 3 years, 1/3, 4 years, the loan is essentially kind of forgiven. And I think at the same time, I think one of the big issues is spouses, if they're married. How do we get them here to call Muscatine home? Well, what if we created a collaborative hiring environment between our school district and the great industry we have here in Muscatine to get those resumes of those spouses in the hands of the people that can make hiring decisions and get some of those spouses some interviews and get them hired here in Muscatine. Thanks.
Thank you. And Chris Anderson, your thoughts?
My first thought when I saw that was I'd do cartwheels if it would help, but I don't think it really would. I think these guys have all said great things. We all know that recruiting into Muscatine has been a challenge all across the board. And I think the biggest thing we need to do, as Bev said, is listen to the people that choose to leave and choose not to come here. The candidates that we offered a job to, but they selected another one, reach out. Ask them why they didn't come. You're probably going to hear a lot of the same things. And what we can do with that information then is create a structure in which we can individualize the stories and individualize the recruiting efforts for each candidate that comes in. You know, not every person is going to love the symphony, or not everyone is going to love anything that we have to offer. But if we partner with the other organizations in the community to help recruit these in their areas of interest, will be successful, because we all know that if you bring somebody here with just dollars, they're going to leave for just dollars eventually. And as we've all said, it's about making people part of our family here in Muscatine, and that's what it's ultimately going to boil down to.
Thank you. Okay, so now I've got lots of questions from you in the audience, and I thank you very much for your participation. All these questions from where I sit are new to the candidates, and we'll have a rotation of who speaks first. We're going to keep our time limits. People are going to have 60 seconds to answer these questions so that we can keep the evening moving along. And I have a few duplicates here, so we're going to start with those. This one has to do with, as a board member, would you visit schools? Would you be able to spend time in classrooms? Does your situation allow you to get out and visit schools and to see firsthand so that you have accurate knowledge of what is actually happening in schools each day? And we're going to start with you, Tammy.
Great. Thank you, Sue. So spending time in the classrooms and in all the buildings is great. There are a lot of ways that you can do that, from student activities to there's each year I get a faithful request for, as we do Read Across America, celebrating, I think I've always ended up with a Dr. Seuss book that I get to read when I'm able to do that. And taking the time out from the day to do that is great. There's also great communication, though, that can happen with parents and with teachers, and understanding as well what our role as a board member is. So stepping into the classroom is great. We love to have that feedback, but we also want to encourage a lot of communication within our buildings and between our teachers and between their administrators and between our parents, that they're all working together.
Thank you very much. Beverly Gertz?
Well, as I said, I'm lucky I'm retired. And so I can spend as much time at a school as they want me to be, especially here at Fall Festival time. You'll see me every day at Colorado helping out. When beginning of the year, they send home a list of what would you like to do, and I always check the bottom, call me when you need me. So yes, I can spend as much time as they'd like.
Very good. Thank you. Toby McCarter?
You know, that's a great question. Hello, by the way, to the balcony up there. I have the time. My business allows me to have the time to give back to the community, but that question made me think, but I want to be cautious. I grew up with an educator in my household. My mom's taught for almost 40 years. I trust teachers, and I trust administrators. If there's an issue, absolutely, I'd be happy to go to the school, but that's not what I do for a living. I don't run schools. I don't know how to most appropriately make rules necessarily for elementary or middle school. I could visit, but I think I'd want to leave the job to the educators. Thanks.
Thank you. Chris Anderson, your response?
I echo what these guys have said to the point that being in the schools is a privilege, and as long as it's not a distraction to the students and to the educational process, I'm more than happy to. I'm in a position like Toby and Bev where I could commit as much time as I wanted to, but the question is that really the right thing? I think we'd probably find that school board members coming in like Tammy does and having a face in the building so everybody knows who we are and isn't afraid to reach out to us, isn't afraid to ask us questions or tell us their concerns, that we can then direct them through the correct channels to their teachers, their administrators, or whatever the case may be. That's absolutely great. And whatever the district would need in that regard, as long as it's part of an overarching plan to make sure that we aren't hindering the educational process, I'd love to be a part of it.
Thank you. And Tim Bauer?
I guess the answer to that is obviously yes, as much time as we possibly can. We get invites all the time for different events, different things that the teachers and the buildings would like us to participate. And as Tammy mentioned, we do get invited every spring to go and read in the classroom, which is, a wonderful event for the schools. Over the years, I've participated and supported a lot of the groups. My wife and I were president of the Muskie Band Boosters for 4 of the 8 years that we were involved, which the policies required us only to be for 4 years. It could be for 4 years. So we struggle to not be a part of those things. And so I want to be engaged as much as I can. I support mentor groups, not only here in Muscatine, but I have helped also different schools in the area. our responsibility is also to help bring additional support to this community. So that time has to be balanced also, so at the state level and so forth. But being in the buildings is very important because that's where you hear and see what's going on.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Has to do with different employee groups. I'm a retired teacher, and toward the end of my career, probably the last 10 years, I did a lot of contract maintenance and negotiating, and so I was interested with what the legislature did last session. And I think most everybody knows that collective bargaining laws were changed, and we have a new list of what's permissive and what isn't. And so the question here is, when negotiating contracts, would you discuss permissive language? And what would your commitment be to maintain current contract between the district and bargaining units and to keep dialogue open between the school board and the different bargaining groups? And I'll be glad to repeat that as best I can. I'll make it shorter, I promise. So this next round, we need to start with Beverly.
Well, as a custodian, I can tell you I negotiate a lot of contracts. I was the president of AFSCME Local 1560 for over 10 years. I was also on the chairperson of just the custodial group. And I understand the laws have changed, but just because they say you only have to talk about this doesn't mean that's all you should talk about. I am not happy with the idea of just saying we're only going to talk about wages and the rest of the things that affect you, too bad. I think that is not the way you treat people who work for you, and I would certainly be a voice for them.
Thank you. Toby McCarter?
As I mentioned, I think that as a board member, we need to equip the administration to attract and retain the highest quality teachers and administrators we can find. Not only do we want to be a great place to work, but we should expect to be the first choice of those candidates. I believe we can do this by ensuring that the district has competitive salaries, benefits, policies, and programs.
Thank you. Chris Anderson?
I think to actually answer the last part of your question first, I think the open dialogue and trust building process between administration, the bargaining units, the board, is probably the first and foremost thing, because we all know that if you don't feel like you're being heard, regardless of whether somebody's giving you what you want or not, it's not going to be a healthy environment. And so as we do that, I completely agree, we need to be an employer of choice. We need to be looking at creative ways to fulfill the needs of all our employees, from teachers to paras, custodians, bus drivers. And I think as we do that, we keep it all inside of a realm of being fiscally responsible and putting our children's education first.
Thank you. Tim Bauer?
I think one thing we've got to make sure we don't do is have a document be our communication tool between people. We need to work together. We need to be having conversations. All of us, who, whether we have a union contract or whatever, we all have policies and rules that we have to abide by. So we've got to communicate. We've got to work together, and we've got to make sure we're doing what's right for kids. If we're not able to do that, then the kids are going to lose. So we all have to, like I said earlier, and I'm going to keep using the word we have to work together to do what's right for our children and our employees. They're what makes it happen. And for the first couple of years when my daughter was starting to teach, I would hear horror stories at night of some of the things. And you think that can't be that way. And it's gotten better. with experience and with support of her leadership and others, and the mentoring of other teachers helping her. And that's what we've got to do. Make sure all those things are in place so we're all doing the right thing and not just because of a contract.
Thank you. And Tammy Draba.
I believe that we have a good relationship with all of our bargaining units, and I also believe that we work very hard to continue that relationship through communication and respect, which is key to the relationship. This year, agreeing on a 3-year contract in 11 years. This was a record-setting time for us from a teaching perspective of negotiating that contract, and some of you in the audience are smiling and nodding, so I know you agree with me. And we didn't hesitate to do that. I also remind myself when I watched what was happening with collective bargaining, change is hard and it's really scary, and I understand that. And my promise to you is that we will work through this together, and we will work through this with great communication and a responsible manner so that we come out with an agreement and an arrangement that puts our kids first.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question. If you are elected and serve on the board and have an opportunity to hire a superintendent, what would you look for in the next candidate for superintendent? And we're going to start with Toby McCarter.
Superintendent. Well, first I have to say publicly, I'm a big fan of Dr. Reeby. I think he's done a tremendous job here at the district from my experience and my...
I should add that I left this out.
Sorry?
My error. It says by retirement, you know.
Oh.
We don't get to keep Reeby forever.
Superintendent.
Dr. Reeby, if you're watching, you heard that.
Yes, you must stay.
I tell my kids every day when they get out of the car to be bold and be a blessing. I've told my principal that at Mulberry. I would tell a superintendent candidate that he or she would have to do the same thing. I think credentials are important, but I think that sometimes a school district can feel like a business, like they're the CEO. I think they have to be able to collaborate, and they have to be personable. I think they have to have an open door policy, and they have to expect greatness.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you. Chris Anderson, you're next.
I think the most important thing for me as I look at who would lead the district is somebody who's stable, who you can trust with their hands on the wheel of what is a large multi-million-dollar organization. That said, they've also got to be a leader, they've got to be a visionary, they've got to be able to motivate, and they've got to be able to look behind them and make sure that everybody's following them. Because a leader with nobody behind them is just going out for a walk. And we've all seen what happens in a district when that happens. And we have no desire to go back to that. Dr. Reeby has done a tremendous job of leading our district. So I think something along the Dr. Reeby line would be a good idea.
Thanks very much. Jim Bauer, your thoughts?
First of all, we got to make sure the individual fits the district, fits the community, and fits the goals of our district and the direction we're trying to go. They've got to be a leader, they've got to be ethical, and they've got to be trustworthy. So we'd be looking for somebody that fits that mold, which is very hard to do. I've gone through that process of hiring a superintendent, and it takes a lot of hours, a lot of time, and there's a lot of variables that go into that discussion. But the first thing is to make sure it's somebody that can direct the district and get everybody behind the person. Our district is not a speedboat. You can't make changes overnight. It's an aircraft carrier, so it's got to be directed. But you got to keep that direction going, and you got to have the support and the team behind them to make that happen.
Thank you. Tammy Draba.
After going through this process a couple of different times in my career on the board, it is not an easy process to do. And to me, one of the first things we need to look at is we just, as a board, approved our mission on a page, and to go back and look at what are our goals of the district and what have we said are the things that we want to accomplish. And of course, that is success for our students. There's a financial accountability that we want to continue to grow with. And so thinking about some of the skill sets that that individual needs then becomes very important. And it does take someone that's very dynamic, has great communication, is able to work with a wide variety of individuals, and will always put our students first.
Thank you very much. Beverly Gertz?
I think if I was going to be looking at hiring a new superintendent or a different superintendent, I would be looking for someone who can communicate and build trust with all employee groups. Administrators are important, teachers are important, but so are the support staff. And I think we need someone that can talk to the administrator and the food service worker. We also need someone who is going to put just as much emphasis on preschool as they do on high school. Because if you don't have that education and get that basics from preschool on, it's not going to matter what you do in the high school. They're just not going to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question is, says, good teachers know that all students are different and learn in different ways. How can we be sure that we have a child-centered curriculum to address those needs instead of a subject-based, data-driven curriculum? And we're going to start with Chris Anderson.
Will you repeat that one more time
You bet.
for me, please? Thanks.
Yes. Good teachers know that all students are different and learn in different ways. How can we be sure that we have a child-centered curriculum to address those needs instead of a subject-based, data-driven curriculum?
Thanks, Sue.
Yep.
I would actually challenge the premise of the question. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think you can have, and we do have, excellent teachers who can both teach to the individual student and make sure that they're hitting all the marks that studies have shown predict success. So I would say that if that's not what we're experiencing, that's what we need to move to. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think we need both.
Thank you. Tim Bauer?
I think as a board member, this is where you've got to make sure our experts in the district are doing the right thing. As Chris mentioned, the programs, there has to be ways to measure success, but they have to be in a manner that will get you information that means something, not just data that's numbers on a paper. And I think we're doing a great job, but we got to make sure as a board member we're letting the people responsible for those decisions make those decisions and provide us recommendations on how and why we need to go this way. All children do learn differently. All three of my kids learn differently, and we all know that. And so the different tools have to be there so they are flexible so that everybody can learn, but we need to have data from that so that we can make decisions to move forward. Thank you.
Tammy Draba?
The information that our students need, the curriculum that they need to learn, will be the same content for all of our students. I understand that the method of how that gets delivered does need to be individualized a little bit to each student. Having two children of my own, they both learn very differently. And I hope that and I've watched that they have had teachers that have been able to connect with them in very different ways. The most important thing that is in our students' classroom is their teacher. I also hope that through communication, we're talking about what is working well. I know that in all the buildings, they are carefully monitoring the data of every student, so they're also identifying early when there are different things that they need to look at or that they need to try.
Thank you. Beverly Gertz?
You know, one thing I would like to see us be a little more flexible on is teachers having the time to expand on a unit. If they're teaching a certain subject and kids seem really jazzed and excited about it, that they are able to push things back a little bit and spend a little more time on that subject matter that really has a kid's interest. And sometimes I don't think we have that flexibility anymore because our curriculum is so rigid. And maybe we need to look at not having all students in one grade. Maybe we need to be able to take the 2 seconds and split them up for reading or math, and so you can have different grade levels or different ability levels so that kids have a chance to learn and not be pressured. So,
Thank you very much. And Toby McCarter.
I agree with a lot of the things that the candidates have said today. And when I think of data, I mean, data's data. It's kind of boring, but we need something to track. Every child learns differently, but I would argue every teacher teaches differently. And I think every teacher has a strength that they could leverage. I would want to, unfortunately or fortunately, use the data to figure out, okay, where are we? Is it working? Who are our front lines, and what do they say? And then what strengths could they bring to the table, the teachers that are in the room, that are seeing the students? What do they want to bring to the table to help foster that learning environment for our students? Thanks.
Thank you. Next question says, does the district need a new athletic facility? And the lucky first hitter on that one is going to be Tim Bauer.
Thank you. Well, as probably most of you in this room know, we have been discussing this, and we've gone from a number of different extremes. And it goes back from discussions 7 years ago on what we needed to enhance our facilities and make our community more attractive to others coming. It's kind of one of those encouraging people to come to the community thing, unfortunately, or fortunately. We've done a lot with our facilities. We're going to continue doing a lot with our facilities. Some of our big decisions we got to be working with our state legislators is the state penalty, so we can have more money to do those kind of things. Muscatine Community School District is debt-free when it comes to facilities. Do we need an athletic facility? If you talk to those experts in the buildings, those experts in the people in the community, it is something that will help bring people to the community, but it's something our students need for having a facility that makes it better for them. We've got a long ways to go on that decision. We'll be starting to see that. That'll be information that's going to be created and started for the board review starting here in a few weeks. So we've got some decisions to make, and we'll determine that as we go forward as a board.
Thank you. Tammy Drapa?
I am excited for the board to talk about a new PE facility, is what I'm excited to talk about. The intention of the facility that we have discussed is a huge priority for our PE department, which means all of our students. Now, our athletics will certainly benefit from that, as well as our community members thinking about opening up more space for some of the programs that we have with our Parks and Recreation Department through the city, and getting more students potentially on the campus of MHS so that as they grow up through the community, that campus doesn't maybe feel quite so big. But I think we have a huge opportunity to look at what else we can do and offer our students from a PE perspective, and also really encouraging those lifelong healthy lifestyles that our students need.
Thank you. Beverly Gertz?
wow. Okay. I'm not a sports fan. You can tell I'm not an exercise person. I have nothing against them, but I think we have better ways to spend our money than athletic facilities, PE facilities, whatever you want to call them. I think our science areas, our industrial tech areas need to come before PE and sports, because those areas are what get kids jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Toby McCarter?
I think that's probably an age-old question for a lot of districts, considering the tax income situation that we've had in the state of Iowa, and that the state of Iowa really, I think I heard, hasn't really grown in population much since like 1900 or so. What I think we need to look at is it a recruiting tool? I can't sit here and tell you, yes, it makes sense, and no, it doesn't. I haven't seen the numbers, and I want to be fiscally responsible. But if you're talking about attracting great staff, great kids, great families, right, wrong, or indifferent, a lot of times the things they're looking at are the facilities. They're looking at the schools. They're looking at the report cards of the schools. I think we could use that to our advantage. I can't tell you right now one way or the other which way I would go. Thanks.
Thank you. Chris Anderson.
I think need is the tough word in that question. Do we need one? Can we not possibly survive without one, a new PE athletic facility? No, we probably can survive without one. Do I think it would be great for the community, great for recruiting, great for the students to have access, as Tammy said, from an early age to the high school so we become one community? Absolutely, I think it would be a tremendous tool for the community. I think we need to be fiscally responsible as we do it. We need to come up with creative ways to finance it and to make sure that it is open to the entire community as appropriate, so that it really becomes a community center where the ideals of the district and our students know they are a focus.
Okay, thank you. Next question has to do with funding, state funding, which you live with, not a lot of control over it, but it says, what should be the amount of allowable growth from the legislature to the public schools? I might alter that and say, you know, if you could have your wish, what would it be? And as a follow-up to that, or just as a kind of a question that's up here that's similar, Governor Kim Reynolds has been talking about the possibility of calling back the legislature due to some projections that aren't terribly bright. And so along with what you'd like to have your allowable growth be, just in case it went the other direction, what might be your priorities if you had less funds to run your schools? So I know that's a twofer, but
Can you repeat the second part of that
yeah,
for me, please?
it's what would your priorities be if you had less money to run schools? Because the governor has said that there's a shortfall and is talking about the possibility of calling legislators back this fall to make some changes, I think.
Thank you.
That's a possibility anyway. So, Tammy, you get the honor of starting off on this one.
Not only am I excited to start first, but I'm glad it's an easy question.
There you go.
I don't know what the magic answer is. Would I love to see the days when we had 8, 9% of the time we called it allowable growth, and there's probably only a small handful of us in the room that can remember those days, but that reality is that's not going to happen. I also remember in the not so distant past being on the board and finding out as we're into the school year, you need to take a 10% across the board cut right now. And that was really, really tough. That was go home at night and not sleep tough, because nobody wants to take away programs. Nobody wants to have to cut. Our goal was to find areas that we could cut back in without touching our students, and we were successful in that. While I would love to say a number, if we get a maintain at 0 this year, we'll make that work.
Thank you. Beverly Gertz?
Well, I don't think the state can ever give us enough money. We always can use more. What I'd like to see them do is fund things that are mandated that they currently do not fund. And I think once they say, we're going to give you your 2% or your 1% or wherever it is, they should keep their promise. But if they don't and we have to cut our budget, I would like to just stay with core classes. I would like us to cut back to the state guidelines as far as busing and things like that. I mean, nobody wants to make those kind of cuts, but I think we'll have to make some tough choices.
Thank you. Toby McCarter?
I have no earthly idea as far as numbers go. I'll be honest about that, but I will tell you, I think being debt-free right now as a district, I think is a positive. I think that starting today, if we were to look to find some efficiencies to prepare for that time when that might happen, could set us ahead of schedule. And I also think, gosh darn it, if we can recruit and retain the top talent to our community, more people are going to want to live here. By default, our tax base is going to increase. By default, the number of dollars per student will increase. We need more families, and we need 15 seconds. I'm done. Thanks. We're going to talk about this, Nora. So, I know, it's all right. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Chris Anderson, your turn.
So I think the reality is we all know that it's going to be tough for a while. We all know that we'd love to see, and like all of us have said, we'd love to see huge numbers of growth. We'd love to see everything funded the way we could dream it to be. But we also know that we have budgets. We have to be fiscally responsible. And so I think one of the key things that we can do is take a page from our business leaders in the community, work on continuously improving the processes of the school district, bring them in, let them see what they could do to help us. It worked tremendously in the healthcare arena. It can work in the schools. And I think that we can look at creative ways of financing with partners with small businesses and other places like that to help pick up the load if we feel we really need it as a community. So priorities, of course, core classes, things of that nature, but I think the real answer is taking the intellectual assets of this community and bringing them all in.
Okay, thank you. Tim Bauer.
Well, we all want to say we'd like the most that we can get. That's not reality. It's not realistic. You have to look at the total picture, and there's only so much money that is in the state, and there's laws on what can be and cannot be done. And a lot of this money is tied up beyond even the legislators' controls in Des Moines and, of course, ours. I was first time voted on the board in 2009 in September. In our October meeting, we were told we've got a 10% across the board cut on 1 month, and I'm like, what's that mean? Well, we rolled up our sleeves as a board, we worked through it, and we figured out how to do what we needed to do to not affect our children. And that's what was important. And if you look at our numbers, they dipped, but we've recovered, and we've done a good job of pulling those numbers back to where they needed to be. So if something does happen like that again, we'll be able to react in a way that will hopefully not affect our children. 83% of our funds go to teachers' pay, and so it gets really hard. So we got to work at other creative ways to make it work.
Thank you very much. Our next question comes from a person in the audience who is interested in knowing about why we are investing in Chromebooks. Our students will miss out on important skills. Excel does not equate to Google spreadsheets. What is the long-term plan? Now, I realize that, some of you didn't make those decisions because you're not on the board, but if you want to take a stab at it, you're more than welcome. This person wants to know why we're headed in the direction of Chromebooks. And Beverly Gertz, you are first on this one.
Okay. Chromebooks, whatever type of computer you're talking about, they're all the same to me. But I will tell you, I think kids need to learn to pick up a book and read it. I think they need to learn to write notes. I think they need to learn to do things the old-fashioned way, because while computers are really great, what if you have a power outage? You're just going to sit in the classroom and stare at each other? I'm just not a real fan of relying heavily on the laptops the kids to carry around all the time.
Thank you. Toby?
You said we could pass on this, right?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I'm just kidding. I think that, this is tough. I'm probably not the most technologically savvy person in my family. I also get on my children a lot about reading and writing because I think it's important, and grammar. However, I am very familiar with the world we live in today. And technology is a big part of it, whether it's a smartphone, and we have more power in our hand than to put the man on the moon. We have to embrace it. But at the same time, I still don't think we need to forget where we come from. And if there's a way we could tie that technology into some of those reading habits, some of those writing habits, I think that would be helpful. So I'm not opposed to the Chromebook.
Okay, thank you. Chris Anderson?
I think this comes down to another perspective issue. A lot of these seem to be questions of, is the glass half full, is it half empty, which one should we be doing? And I'm more the guy that's going to ask, where's the rest of the milk, okay? And so I think this actually leads to a great conversation about out-of-school time programming for kids. I think there's only so many hours that a kid's in the school building with the teachers. And I think the way that you increase their access to a wider variety of experiences is have rich out-of-school time programming, such as after-school programs before summertime that focus on remediation, enrichment, and parental involvement. And I think when you put more milk in the glass, so to speak, or more time with instruction, I think a lot of these problems can kind of be set aside because you've increased the amount of educational time the kids have.
Thank you. Tim Bauer?
So I've been on the board when we've gone through the one-to-one initiative where we started out with MacBooks and then we've gone to the Chromebooks and so forth. And a lot of it has to do with the capabilities of the tool itself. The tool is a tool, and it's, do you take the pencil away from the student? I mean, everybody is using technology. It's the way it is, and we need to make sure our kids have the best tools available to them to learn the best. The software on them, that's just another platform. When you go to a new job, you may have a tool called Oracle, you may have a tool called SAP, but knowing how to adapt to use that tool is what's key. And I think we need to keep that in perspective, whether it's a Chromebook or a MacBook. But the technology, we've got to let our kids have the best they have. And we've got it, so it makes us competitive also to bring more families in. You'd go a long ways to find a school that didn't have computers in the classroom, and I don't think that's a direction we want to go.
Thank you. Tammy Draba?
I think the technology for our students is critical for their success. As they move on to college, they will be required to have some sort of technology. They will have at least a class a semester that they will have to be able to do online. Being able to expose them to that technology is important. I agree with Tim's comment that the tool of whether it's an Excel spreadsheet or whether it's a different tool similar to Excel, they need to be able to adapt and learn those tools. I watch college interns come into my place of work, and when I ask, can you use XYZ program, their answer is usually, yeah, well, I don't know, but I'll learn it, just give it to me. And once they play with it a little bit, they pick up that new skill, they pick up that new trait. So I'm less concerned about that particular piece of the tool. I do think providing them access to technology with an appropriate balance is important. If I lose power at work, I too am not overly productive. I need that. I rely on that technology.
Thank you very much. This is a question that I'm going to follow up with from another person in the audience. Again, it deals with technology, and it says, what steps would you take to empower parents to better safeguard their kids online? It says the current settings allow student computers to access media that might be inappropriate or through dating apps or dating sites or other kinds of YouTube videos. So if we could have Beverly Gertz start with that one, what do you think about empowering parents to safeguard their kids online?
Well, actually, I thought the district had parameters they could set on the computers that didn't allow students to see that kind of content. And if that is not the case, then I think there has to be a way for parents to be able to get in and block content. Because parents can't be there 24/7 watching every move their kids make. So I think we need to find some way to overcome this issue. If there's a real issue there, we need to find a way to overcome it.
Thank you. Toby McCarter.
I think it's education. I think it is education from the parents. I think it's education from the schools, from the teachers. I think it's education and encouragement from fellow students. In order to make sure that our students and our graduates have career pathways, they have to understand the impact of what social media and what sites like that can do to them when it comes to the future of what they want to do. From getting into college, colleges are checking social media sites. From getting jobs, employers are checking social media sites. I think it's education. It does start at home, but I think it takes a community to educate a child. Thanks.
Thank you. Chris Anderson.
So I think back to when I was a kid, and there were a lot of things we were told not to do. We always found a way to do it. And I think part of me admires the kids for being able to get around the safeguards we try and put in place. I don't necessarily like where they end up when they do it, but I think, Toby, it's absolutely education and it's engagement with the parents. We did a survey of parents, and I think a lot of them would agree that they could use more resources from the school district, a little more guidance, a little more education. And again, as Toby said, it's a great answer, educating the kids. Social media seems like a great thing, and oftentimes it is. We all get little positives, every little endorphin rush when you get a like on something. That can be good if it's used well. And it's about teaching the kids, much like many other tools. A hammer can be great when it's hitting a nail. It's not so great when it hits your finger. So it's about teaching them how to use it, when to use it, and being there to help pick them up if it doesn't go right.
Thank you. Tim Bauer.
First of all, if that's going on, those parents need to contact the school immediately, and that will be taken care of, I know, within a matter of minutes probably. Those sites are monitored, and they are changing every day. In my workplace, I just finished a training last week for these type of things. It's because it's changing every minute, and it's hard for our IT groups to even keep up with it. So you got to keep moving forward. What our students are having, if you graduated from high school a year ago, you still are going to see it's going to be different this year. So it's a constantly changing thing, and it's a tough area to keep on top of. But we've got to make sure we're all trained and we're all aware. And if there's something there, we've got to be paying attention to what our kids are doing and get to the right people and get it corrected.
Thank you. Tammy.
I'm not sure there's much left that I can add. I think education is extremely important. If you have concerns of something that your student has access to, absolutely contact the school right away. But as parents, we have a responsibility to teach our children to use their social media and all of their tools appropriately. It's exhausting as a parent of two teenagers to keep up with all their social media. It's probably a part-time job, if not a full-time job. But I also know that it's really important, and they know that I'm monitoring that. So whether I'm watching what's on their school computer or I'm watching what's on the personal device, it's critical that we're all involved in that. And as a community, it's important we talk to each other about that. It's important parents reach out to each other if they feel there's a concern, and that we talk about it and address it and not just hope that it goes away.
Thank you. Toby McCarter, you're going to get this one first. It says the school board receives a largest share of property tax. Do you believe the meetings should all be televised and at least once a month? Not sure I understand that. The community needs to be informed on how tax money is spent.
Can you read that one more time?
Yeah.
So you're asking,
It says, do you believe meetings should all be televised at least once a month? That seems to conflict for me. If it's all meetings and just once a month, I'm not sure.
Maybe we can just speak to the topic.
Why don't we just think about, would you be in favor of increasing the number of meetings that are televised? I hope I
Sure.
haven't
No, it's all right.
misread the question.
I believe in transparency. And this is a great room full of people and people at home, I personally wouldn't have an issue at all to have the public involved or more involved to see kind of behind the curtain what's going on the school board level. Do I think there are probably issues, personnel issues, private issues that may or may not be able to be discussed in public? Probably. But for the most part, I'd be transparent, and if they wanted to come and spend time with us, come on.
Thank you. Chris Anderson?
Couldn't have said it better myself, honestly. Yeah, absolutely. Transparency is key. I see no reason, others, like Toby said, personnel issues and some of those sensitive topics. We can Facebook Live it. I'm fine with it because it's an open conversation for the entire community. We just represent the people. If they don't know what we're doing, they can't be part of the conversation. So I'd be all for it.
Thank you. Tim Bauer?
First of all, first meeting of every month is televised, and so it's available for everybody to look at. It's the other meetings that aren't, and there is a cost to that. But we are governed by the open meeting laws of the state of Iowa, and so all these meetings, that they're published, they're out there, they're available for people to come see. The board office, the board secretary does a great job of publishing information the next morning of what was summarized in the meeting. So if you're not able to see it or witness it or be there, that is being communicated. And that's a long ways from where we used to be. I would love for them all to be televised. I think it'd be great. The cost to it is one thing, but there's technology that we're actually looking into and have been working on of how to do that in different media methods. The mechanism today does a good job for our community, but I'm sure there's other ways as we continue to move on, just like we're talking about different technology today to do things to convey messages to our parents.
Thank you. Tammy Draba?
So as it was already mentioned, our first meeting each month is televised, and which is a great way to be able to keep our public informed. There is a cost associated with that. So that's one piece of figuring out what's the best method to be able to get that information out to the public if it's a live situation. We always welcome members of the community. In fact, it gets really scarce out there a lot of times for a lot of meetings. And as Tim mentioned, we are governed by the open meetings law, which means on the rare occasion that we can have a closed session, we can never we cannot take any kind of action in a closed session, and that is for transparency. We are responsible for taxpayer dollars, and the decisions that we make, you all want to know what those are. So even if it's a personnel topic, if it's a purchase of real estate topic, there are very few things we can have a closed meeting for. We always come out of open meeting to make any of those decisions.
Okay, thank you. Beverly Gertz?
I would like to see both meetings televised. I realize there is a cost, but I would also like to see a listing, just like my home checkbook, of what every check is written for every month. I'd like to know where those dollars go every single month, and I'd like to see what is put on in every department's budget, because I'd like to see where we could cut some fat. And if we could, then maybe we'd have some money to be able to afford to have the second meeting televised.
Thank you. Okay. This question makes an assumption that there is some low morale in the district. And it asks, how would you be able to address low morale in the district? And if it doesn't exist now, maybe it might in the future. So we're going to start with Chris Anderson on this one.
You know, it's interesting. We put out a survey to parents, teachers, and support staff and students, and the teacher response was huge. And the morale issue was interesting to look at the results. There were some that said, you know, this is tough here, this is tough there, but overall, all of them were generally happy. I think the morale issue comes when individual circumstances prevent somebody from, I don't want to say getting what they want, from feeling like they're being heard or feeling like they're a part of the team and being a part of the solution. And so I think morale often comes from the leadership in the district and the co-workers all working together as a team. So I think any team building, anything that can come down from the administration would be a tremendous help on that.
Thank you. Tim Bauer?
Well, our vision on a page addresses that in some sense. One of our core values is mutual respect of everybody, whether that be students, teachers, staff, administrators, all the individuals. And one of the goals, and there's a bunch of them on the back, happens to be kind of measures on morale. So those are the things that need to be checked. Every organization needs to do it. They need to have surveys so you can see where you're at. So you have your fingers on the pulse, so to speak, of where things are at. As a board member, you get hit up walking through the grocery store. It's a little tough right now because we get hit up all the time walking through the grocery store. So a 30-minute walk usually takes an hour and a half now. But that's what we're here for. We are your communication tool, so you need to come to us. We want to hear about those type of things. But it is important. If there was an issue, as Chris mentioned, it's a lot of times because of a certain thing that maybe didn't quite get to do the right thing. You didn't have to have, a student might not have had recess for as long as they wanted. Teacher may not have been able to leave at a certain time in a particular instance. So, but those things have to be addressed and taken out one at a time.
Thank you. Tammy Droba.
I agree that a temperature read, if you will, is important, and we've done that many times over the years through a district-sponsored survey. We've also placed those results on our website so that they can be viewed by our community. Certainly, if somebody's feeling that there's an issue, again, that communication is key, whether it's reaching out to your board members, whether it's starting within your building and having that conversation. It's a tough thing to address if we're not aware of that. So we would ask for your open communication in that, and when you see those surveys come out, please participate and fill them out.
Thank you. Beverly Gertz.
I'd like to say that I know there is a morale problem in the school district. I have talked to employees, I have to talk to department heads, and I know there is a morale problem in the school district. I'm not sure how we're going to fix the morale problem. I don't think employees feel comfortable coming forward and expressing how they really feel, because I think they feel that there will be reprisal. And somehow we do have to address the situation.
Thank you. Toby McCarter.
Man, I see nothing but good news. I'm excited about the future. 2016, kindergarten ready, 58%. 2015, 50%. 89% of the kindergartners enrolled this year attended 4-year-old preschool. Is there room for us to improve? Absolutely. And part of what I've done on the board with Muscatine Charities is we've raised money, and a lot of our money goes to preschool scholarships for 4-year-olds. Well, now we're exploring 3-year-olds and what the barriers to entry of preschool. So I see a lot of good things happening, and I'm very encouraged about the direction of the district and the morale of the district from the people I've talked to. Thanks.
Thank you. This question asks, what priority would you have on building maintenance? And then it says especially Central Middle School. Tim Bauer, you get to start.
Well, the buildings are the foundation of our district, and we have got plans out there which we've developed and put in place for keeping constant maintenance on these buildings. It's hard to believe, but Central is one of our older buildings, and it's probably the next one we're going to be needing to make some decisions on what kind of maintenance we're going to do with that building. But I've worked a lot with Jeff Miller, who deals with these buildings every day. And it's interesting to see, we've had surveys done by the architects in Des Moines. So we know what these buildings have and what they need to be done. So there's a lot of information. We're working on them. It's a priority. Without a building, there's no place for the kids to go. So it is a priority, just like we've got all priorities, and they're all about at number 1 or 1.1, because you got to have buildings, you got to have great staff and teachers so that our kids can be the best that they can be when they graduate from high school.
Thank you. Tammy Draba.
We often talk about at board meetings that we're never at a lack of things that we have to spend money on, and our facilities is certainly one of them. So we've talked a lot about Central Middle School, and it is absolutely part of our long-range plan as we look at things that need to happen in the district. And it is an older building, so that also means the maintenance of that building is extra critical, if you will, because we know that maintaining that building is extremely important, and it's important for our students, it's important for our community. So it is on the radar, and it will be having its turn in the strategic placement of where we need to be spending funds to keep our buildings updated.
Thank you. Beverly Gertz.
Well, I can tell you as a custodian who worked in the school district, I think they did a good job at maintaining our buildings. I didn't always get as much as I wanted done when I wanted it done. And as far as Central, it's an old school, it's a solidly built school. That makes maintenance on it a little tougher, a little more expensive. I think that is a conversation we'll have to have down the road, is what are our plans for Central Middle School? But that'll just have to wait its turn.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, where am I at? Toby McCarter.
Building maintenance is a priority, as long as we have a safe learning environment for our children. I personally love the look of Central Middle School. The architecture, the history. If anybody's seen the movie Hoosiers, that gym, it's got that smell. What a great facility it is. What a great facility to have in our community. Do we need to find a way responsibly to maintain our buildings? There's no question about it. But I think we should be cautious. I don't necessarily think that we need to erase history in order to preserve it and move forward to the future. Thanks.
Chris Anderson.
You know, it's interesting. I thought Central was old 25 years ago when I was there, and it's only gotten older. I agree. The buildings are critical to the entire mission. I think the long-range plan that the previous board members have put together, along with the leadership of the district, is sound. I think the procedure that they went through with Jefferson, making sure that we stay debt-free throughout the construction of the new building, is critical because it allowed us to stay fiscally responsible and be able to weather those times that we're worried about with income downturns from the state and things like that. So absolutely, maintenance is huge and definitely a priority.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. We're going to start with Tammy. This person wants to know if you support putting handwriting and penmanship back into the curriculum for primary grades.
Handwriting and penmanship, it's an interesting conversation at my house. I've learned that if I want to leave a note for my husband and I don't want the kids to read it, I just have to write it in cursive. And that works out pretty well at our house. Would I love to see it put back in? I would. But what would you like to take out if we put that in? I think we have to look at what that balance is. We have so many things that we want our students to learn today. They absolutely need to be able to write. There's no question about that. That will absolutely be a lifelong skill. But we may need to be creative about thinking how we provide them that skill, as well as all of the other pieces of their curriculum that are mission critical.
Thank you. Beverly Gertz.
I think it is imperative we teach children how to write in cursive. If you ever want to read historical documents, you ever want to do any genealogical research, you're going to be out of luck if you can't read cursive. And I realize there's lots of things you're trying to pack into that language arts curriculum, but I'm sorry, I think something can move over and they can make room to teach cursive. I think there's no question about it.
Thank you. Toby McCarter.
Could you repeat the question for me?
Yes, the
Please.
person wants to know if you would be in favor of putting handwriting and penmanship back into the curriculum for the primary grades.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Anderson?
I'm going to make two of my friends who are OTs really happy right now. Yes, I think it should be. I think there's definitely an issue of packing the day, and maybe this is where, again, we go back to out-of-school opportunities. You know, we seem to keep limiting ourselves to what the district can do during this 7 to 3 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock to 3:30 time. Well, maybe we partner with some after-school programs, give them the resources to be able to teach cursive there, have some OTs work with them. I think we need to expand our perspective on this rather than just putting blinders on and assuming it has to be done during the school day. There is a more creative answer to this problem.
Thank you. Tim Bauer?
I also agree, handwriting and penmanship is very important, and how it's done, whether it's in the classroom or out of the classroom, is the other issue. Jamie Vollmer, who we've heard speak, and actually he'll be speaking at the Iowa Association School Board meeting in November, has got a list of activities that have been added to the classroom that teachers are responsible for, and it goes from one page back in 1950 to about 50 pages now that we keep throwing at the teachers and keep giving them things that they have to do. So we need to come up with a way that is constructive for allowing our kids to learn cursive and penmanship. It is important, as Bev mentioned, reading old documents and so forth, but the time and how and when is what we've got to work to be efficient so that we can do the things that some things need to be put in there that are very important. That's one of them. It's back to the same thing. They're all right there as being very important. But we've got to figure out a way to do it, though.
Thank you. Okay, next question. We're going to start with Beverly Gertz on this one. This one has to do with dress codes. If you are elected, what would you do to ensure that dress codes are fair and not sexist or demeaning toward girls?
Oh, I didn't realize they were, but okay, dress codes. I think kids need, I realize we want to be stylish, but I think you need to not wear t-shirts or shirts that have vulgarity on them. I think you need to have the appropriate body parts covered up. It's not a nightclub, it's school. I really don't know if there's an issue with the dress code. I guess I would have to know what the problem is before I could actually address that specific problem.
Thank you. Toby McCarter?
I have to agree with Beverly. I can also tell you that with children at home and an 11-year-old daughter, it's a topic of conversation in our household probably daily, not necessarily with her, but just in general. And I think back to my mom. How would I want the community, their friends, their teachers, at first glance, right, wrong, or indifferent, to make a judgment? In this case, we're talking about girls on my daughter. I think that's an education too. I think it starts at home, but I think we can gently nudge as well at school to make sure that those girls, in this case we're talking about, have confidence that they don't have to dress that way. Thanks.
Thank you. Chris Anderson?
Luckily, I haven't had to face this issue. I think the biggest thing is, I know it's been a topic of concern in the education community. There are districts out there already that have great policies and supportive environments where this is can become a positive, where it can become a topic of conversation. I think I would leave it to the professionals to help us benchmark what other districts are doing and bring that in with input from the community. So.
Thank you. Tim Bauer?
Well, this is just one thing that we did review and approve in our policies in the last month or so, there are policies in place, but a lot of this goes back to the parents in the home. Make sure we're sending our kids to school appropriately dressed, male or female. It's very important that they learn that, and you have to wear appropriate clothes in the workplace. So you need to define that and get the support of both the families and the parents, of course, and then the teachers need that support, and we'll provide that as based on our policies that are available today.
Thank you. Tammy Drubba?
Well, as Tim mentioned, we did just approve our student handbook, which part of that addresses a piece of dress code, and I think making sure that our students understand what that is and making sure that our families understand what that is important. To echo Toby's comment, when you wait till they're 14, it's not any easier then either, and mom's opinion is certainly not cool compared to what everybody else is, what everybody else may be doing. And it's important to have those conversations. It's also important that if you feel that that's not happening at the building where your student is at, that you're having that conversation. We want all of our students to feel confident in the way that they're walking through the doors of that building, and we certainly don't want that to impede their learning process. So if you feel that there's something happening in a building, please communicate with your building administrator if it's not being administered how you think that it should be.
Thank you. The next question has to do with student discipline. And we're going to start with you, Toby McCarter. The person wants to know, it's a specific question, but you might think of it in a more general terms of just discipline and how the board would act on policy that might have to do with that. But what do you think of taking recess from a young child who misbehaves in class? And if not, what other options would you want considered?
Is it fair to say that I was one of those children who got recess taken away? That's tough. That's tough because I know with my life experience with my mother and her friends that sometimes kids are there and it's the teacher's responsibility to discipline. And that can make it very, very difficult. That can make it a difficult learning environment. That can impede relationships. But I have here it says be authentic. I am a believer in consequences. And I am a believer in facing those consequences if you've done something wrong, not to support that continued behavior. I'm sure my child has missed recess too. And I've taken care of that at home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Anderson?
Just last week, our 6-year-old asked if he could go swimming in the neighbor's pool. And he'd been a little out of line, and we said no. And you know what? Life went on. I think the bigger picture here is trusting the teachers to motivate students to the correct behavior to where it doesn't become an issue. I think giving them the tools they need, whether that's additional resources in the room, whether it's being able to bring another teacher in on the subject or on the particular situation. I think from a board perspective especially, we've brought these teachers in and administrators in to guide and grow our children to the kind of citizens we want them to be. When it comes to discipline in the room like that, I would defer to their judgment.
Thank you. Tammy Drubba?
I think discipline in the classroom is, I would completely trust the teacher in the classroom to make the decision what needs to happen. I am sure that taking away a recess is not always easy for the teacher either, because it means that may be the only 10 minutes that you get away to go to the restroom or to make a copy or to run an errand within the building that needs to happen. So I trust the judgment in the classroom, and if recess is what needs to happen, then that's what needs to happen. And hopefully that is also shared with parents, whether it's in a note, an email home, in the agenda that says, here's what happened at school today, because I would certainly want to have that conversation with my student when they got home to talk about what was the behavior that drove to losing recess.
Thank you. Beverly Gertz?
You know, missing one recess never kills anybody. And I don't know about every classroom, but I know the classrooms that my 2 grandchildren are in, there is a set program. You know, if you do this, you get a warning. If you do this, you get this, and on down. If you've went as far as losing a recess, then you need to pay the consequences. Now, if this is a day after day after day occurrence, then we have a bigger problem. And then it needs to be addressed, maybe even not on the teacher level, maybe it needs to be addressed with the new mental health program that the district is bringing in, because if this is an everyday occurrence, there's a bigger problem, and it needs to be taken care of.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Can I answer that one?
you bet.
All right.
Sorry, Tim.
That's all right.
Checked you off too soon.
That's okay. I don't see anything wrong with a child missing a recess. If that's appropriate and that's what the teacher said needed to be done. I know when I went home, the teacher that I had in first grade lived not down the road too far, and if I had had a bad day, my mom and dad knew about it before I got home. And I never, ever would ever think of questioning the leadership or the discipline the teacher had provided. And it was the same way with our kids. And I think that's where we as parents have got to support the teachers in these decisions and work with our students and children to figure out why were they disrupting the class. So what can they do to help?
Thank you. This questioner wants to know, what is your opinion of school vouchers? And we're going to start with Chris Anderson.
Well, nothing like an easy one for the new guy.
Oh, it's
So I think vouchers present an interesting dilemma, and it puts a lot more choice back in what I would call the consumer of the transaction. And so I think rather than worrying about the details of vouchers and all that stuff, I think the perspective we should take as a school board is how do we make sure that we're providing a product, and the product being our school district and the things we offer, that we're so competitive that nobody even wants to think about taking their students out of our district. That we would be the place that people want to go as opposed to where they would pull away from. So I think from that aspect, I think the voucher question point is really about motivating us to be better.
Thank you. Tim Bauer?
I got to agree with Chris. As a school board member, I don't want vouchers. We are about public schools. We are about providing the best education to the students that they can get. If vouchers are out there, then we've got to make the school district and our classrooms and our teachers be the destination for those students. If that's going to be that competitive thing we got to work on and continue to drive the importance for building a better school, then we need to do that. So if that's a determination that's made, then we've got to control what we can control.
Thank you. Tammy Draba?
I believe in the public school system, and I think we have an amazing school system in our state, and I would want to do everything I could to support that. And if there are things that we maybe need to tweak or that we need to change, I am all for that. But a voucher system concerns me in what will happen to some of our students who will not be able to take part in that. And I believe it will grow our achievement gap because it will clearly and quickly separate our students. Our students deserve everything, the very best that we have to give them, and I believe we can deliver that through the public school system.
Thank you. Beverly Gertz?
You know, when I first heard about vouchers, I thought, hey, great, this gives us choice. But then I got to thinking, if you have vouchers and you can send your child to the private school, and they're able to still be selective. That's the issue. If they're still able to be selective and not take children who have learning disabilities, not take the extremely poor and disadvantaged, then you end up with a school district that is trying to meet that need with less money. And so for that reason, unless the playing fields are completely equal, I'm not in favor of a voucher system.
Thank you. Toby McCarter?
I believe as a board member that if we help the district and the administration attract and retain top talent, prepare every student for success, make sure that every child is kindergarten ready, and prepare our graduates at MHS for career pathways and have career success, I believe that vouchers would be a non-event.
Thank you. The time for audience questions has expired, and if your question wasn't asked, I encourage you to contact people after the event or at a later time. Each of the candidates is now going to have 1 minute to make a closing statement, and we will begin with Tim Bauer.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you for everybody tonight. We had some great questions, and it all made us think, so I appreciate that. I had a lot of things written down, 5 or 6 pages that I hoped to be able to talk about tonight, and we didn't get to maybe a tenth of them. Our Muscatine Community School District is ever-changing. From 2000 to this past year, unfortunately, our enrollment has reduced by 500 students. That's a substantial amount of money. In the last 3 years, it's reduced by 200 students. So we've done a lot of things to help keep our students first and work with what we need to provide. These are things that we need to continue to do. We talked about the different programs we have at the high school, the academies we're putting in place. It's the most important day of this as being a school board member is graduation Sunday in May. There's nothing better than that day, and that's what makes it you want to do this and help our students and work with our staffs and make sure they have all the tools they need to be able to do what needs to be done to make our community the best in the state of Iowa and in the country. Thank you.
Tammy Drabaugh.
The Muscatine Community School District has many things that we should be extremely proud of. And as a district, I do believe we continue to push ourselves and we don't sit back and say that we're content with where we're at. We continue to push forward with accomplishments. If we continue to work forward together as a community, we will set those high expectations for our students, and they all deserve the very, very best that we have to offer them. At the end of the day, when we sit around the board table and the vote's called for, you need to say you've done your homework. You need to say that you've listened carefully and thoughtfully to those that are around the board and that you've sought input from all sides. I am excited to do that, and I would appreciate your vote on September 12th.
Thank you. Beverly Gertz.
I want to thank those in the audience and those watching at home for taking time out to take part in this forum. And I would love to say, hey, go vote for me, but I think it's more important that you go vote. You've been here, you've been informed, now use your best judgment and go cast a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Toby McCarter.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, League of Women Voters, fellow candidates, all those in attendance here tonight and those watching at home. I'm an only child of a single mother who's been an educator for almost 40 years. There were times when she held 3 jobs to make ends meet. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and learned a lot about life in their walls. I can still see the faces of friends, family, mentors, coaches, teachers, administrators who worked so hard to get me where I am today. And the one thing they all have in common is none of them allowed me to use my circumstance as a crutch or an excuse. I believe we have a choice. We can accept failure because of our circumstances, or we can choose to succeed in spite of our circumstances. Together, let's choose success. Thank you for the opportunity, and I would appreciate your vote and your support on September 12th.
Thank you. And Chris Anderson.
Thank you to everybody that's here. Thank you, Sue. And Tammy, Tim, thank you for your service over the last 8 years. You've done a great job. I think the thing that has stood out to me the most over the last few weeks is we had a meeting out at the school district, and they were showing us all the data and how well the district that taught me and gave me my life, my family, my career is trending. We're going the right way. The ship, as Tim described it, the aircraft carrier, is going the right direction. Now what we need to do is define the higher standards of where we want to be as an employer, as an educator, as a partner in the community, and that's what we need. And that's where I want us to go, and I would appreciate your vote. Chris Anderson, probably be the first one on September 12th.
Thank you. Thanks to the candidates, to the audience here and in the viewing audience, and to the league members who are here and volunteering. I want to thank the City of Muscatine for providing space, the Muscatine Community School District, Muscatine Power and Water Digital TV, and Muscatine Community College for making TV viewing or cable viewing possible. Tonight's program will be rebroadcast on the Civic TV Channel 2 or 702 for the next several weeks at 1 a.m., 4 p.m., and 10 p.m., Friday through Sunday. And we are going to attempt to upload tonight's forum onto YouTube so that if there are people who don't subscribe, that they might still be able to watch. And I appreciate the technical support from Alex Orlins and supervision by Chad Bishop. The election is Tuesday, September 12th, and for the purpose of electing 3 members to the Muscatine Community School Board, the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and I encourage everyone to vote. The League of Women Voters will have another candidate forum for our municipal candidates for City Council and Mayor on October 10th at 7 p.m. in this space. And I invite everyone to come to that event. I think that we'll learn about the candidates on October 10th, just like we learned about candidates tonight. And with good information, we can make good choices and make democracy work. Thank you and good night.